Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Evergreen. This is our Cultivate podcast, and we talk about everything evergreen. And this is a special episode because we are filming live from Olympia First Baptist Church for our annual meeting. And my special guest today is our keynote speaker, Reverend Dr. Angie Barker Jackson. So we are so excited to have you. And I just wanted to jump into a lot of things to talk about because there's so many things I wanted to ask you about. But maybe before we get into that, could we just hear a bit about yourself for some of the viewers who might not be familiar with you? Do you want to just give us a quick rundown, who you are, roughly, and what you do?
Okay. Angie's fine, too.
Okay. Right.
Currently serving as Vice President of Institutional Advancement at Berkeley School of Theology, our American Baptist Seminary here on the West Coast. I am an ordained American Baptist clergy person. I have served 3 congregations. I've also served as a director of a homeless shelter for women and children. Serving the church has been a lifelong passion and thing that I've done. I mean, from the time I was a teenager. So I love that. Love finding new ways to serve. I'm a mom of adult chulldren that are scattered across the country, and even a grandparent. So a multi-dimensional, multi-layered life.
Yeah, and which I really appreciate about you. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into in our episode today. So I find it fascinating that you have this very long, rich experience within the local church ministry, but then you also have a long, rich experience in the theological academy. And so I was wondering, how do you feel like those two connect or inform? Or maybe they are different and that's helpful for you. I don't know. I was just kind of curious how you hold those two worlds together.
I think there's tension between the local church and the academy.
Yes, yeah.
Which makes me a little sad, actually, because I think that the academy needs the local church.
Yes.
And the local church needs the academy.
Yes.
And I think sometimes each of them forgets that they're not whole without the other.
Yeah.
Often the academy is out ahead of the church, as we know, right? In scholarship and in seeing new opportunities and thinking creatively and things like that. And so often the academy presses the church into spaces that the church is not ready to go. But the church needs the academy, to provide well-formed, thoughtful leaders that can take, the church into the future. And sometimes I think the academy forgets that it serves the local church.
Yes.
We get lost in our disciplines. We get lost in, studying ancient texts or lost in the world of ideas.
Yeah.
And we forget that we're forming people.
That's right.
To form people.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I try to remember.
Yeah.
And kind of keeps me centered is that we are in the business of serving people, forming people who are going to go and serve people and form people who we hope will go and serve people and form people.
That's right. Yeah, that's really well said. And I totally resonate with this because, I've gone to 3 different seminaries, right? And I'm also studying at BST. I've even taught a bit. So, I also have some perspective. But what you just talked about, I really agree with, is that we're really supposed to be this interconnected, mutually empowering thing. But it's funny how sometimes academia can really look poorly upon the church of like, oh, you folks, like your thoughts aren't, formed enough and not developed enough. But then you can also see that the church needs to grow and learn. And sometimes they have this like animosity between each other, which is really unnecessary, and we're not going to survive without each other.
Right.
And I like how you actually summed up this idea of we're all about transformation in the end, right? Like true, genuine, holistic transformation. And it doesn't happen unless we're both working together.
That's right.
I think this is a great segue into thinking like my experience working in a lot of different graduate schools. We're all, like post-COVID especially, we're all afraid of the future of education, right? There's a lot of things that have come up. And I was wondering, how do you think you or BST or just even your personal thoughts of like, where do you think theological education needs to go going forward?
There's still tension post-COVID between before and after.
Yes.
I see that.
Yeah.
And I've served more than one institution
That's
as
right.
well. Came
Yes.
to Berkeley School of Theology from another.
Yeah.
And there is still that real tension. You know, a lot of, we sure wish people would come back into the classroom. We remember when the halls were noisy and you know, those sorts of things. And at the same time, we recognize that, you know, the majority of our students are at a distance, and so they're going to come into class virtually. We're living in that tension, which, you know, is not just a tension between, you know, learning modalities, but then also how you learn and how you form people, how you develop deep relationships, or do you? You know, I mean, there's that, right?
Yeah.
Can you? Do you? How?
Yeah.
And we're still, you know, we're still living in that tension and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, a couple of the big trends that ATS, you know, our accreditor, has been showing for years is the decline of the Master of Divinity degree.
Right.
You know, which in ministry circles we hold as the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want,
right.
you know, if you want kind of a first class ordination, right? You have to get the MDiv and you know, and so forth. In a lot of places that's really declining, and so schools are adapting and creating shorter degrees, right? Because shorter means faster, so people can get through school quicker.
Right.
Shorter means less cost because fewer credit hours to pay for.
Yeah.
And so some of the shorter, you know, master's degrees, you know, are growing as opposed to the MDiv. BST is a little bit different.
Yes.
We have those shorter degrees,
Yeah.
but in the last couple of years, we've seen MDiv enrollment go up. And so that's a really interesting thing that we're watching. We don't know why for sure, you know, in our community. Our largest group of learners actually are Doctor of Ministry students. So I'm not sure what they're saying exactly about their experience, but one of my hypotheses would be that we're serving people who were trained for ministry, formed for the pastorate in a different age, and with the changes in our society, in the church, a doctor of ministry in this, you know, in this time is a way of kind of being re-equipped or refined for this new landscape that we all find ourselves in.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you know, if that's what's driving
that's very interesting.
Really, really strong doctor of ministry enrollment right now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting how you frame it, because I do wonder going forward, we're kind of asking the question of like, to what end am I doing this, right?
Right.
Actually, my MDiv was very useful. To this day, I still draw on my MDiv classes. I still remember certain things said because I had gone into sort of environments and places where there wasn't a lot of opportunities for further learning. Okay. So I really drew upon it and really did all my self-learning like with the base of MDiv. So it was extremely valuable for me. And I wonder, as you're talking, if there's sort of a question of people calling out, like, there's a lot of just learning for the sake of learning, a lot of theoretical things, but to what end will this like actually inform the meaningful work I do right in the grassroots, you know? And if people can't make that connection from, you know, the great scholars all the way down to the everyday, you know, that kind of holistic connection, I wonder if maybe that's something that people are looking for. And that's really interesting about the Doctor of Ministry, which I'm also doing, right, at BST. A lot of people I'm looking for, like, they want to go deeper into the work that they're doing. They really want to get greater meaning from the things they're exploring. So it's a very interesting time, right? Like, I feel there were so many things about the academy that were just sort of entrenched, like, oh, it'll always be like this, you know, and, you know, there's always the tenure and the systems. But I think with the pandemic and a lot of stuff, we're just kind of rethinking of like, well, what does it really mean to be empowered, equipped, to learn? And it's a scary journey, but I think it's interesting to see where we're going next. Which actually kind of leads me to this next thing I want to ask you about, you oversee development, like fundraising at BST. And one of the first things I remember my first conversation with you, I walked away thinking, like, wow, she has a genuine passion for stewardship. And it wasn't about money. I didn't feel that. It was like a spiritual kind of groundedness to it. And so I was wondering if you could maybe share a bit about your understanding of stewardship and development.
I love that. I remember our first conversation too.
Yeah.
At First Baptist Seattle.
Yeah.
It was at one of these annual gatherings. It's been a journey for me.
Okay.
With stewardship, fundraising, however you want to call that in the church. I think in the church more often we call it stewardship than we call it fundraising. It's been a decades-long journey, and I would say it's been a journey of generosity for me. So I can remember being a child, and seeds were planted in my childhood. My parents were churchgoers, and I can remember my dad sitting at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings, to write the check, and then he would fold the check and put it in his breast pocket,
right?
And take it to church and put it in the offering. And I witnessed that week after week. I never knew how much the check was. I never knew if it was a tithe or if it was some other percentage. They didn't talk about it.
Right.
But they led by example.
Uh-huh.
I also remember a story of my parents being very observant of our small town pastor and wife, their needs, and seeing that they had needs that were not being met by pastoral compensation, if you will. And I remember one incident in particular where they observed a need and they met it with their resources. My mom went to my dad and said, I feel God calling me to do this. And my dad said, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to contribute this. And together they did this for our pastor's family, this thing.
Wow.
And with no fanfare. It was quiet, but I observed it as a child. So, fast forward, I witnessed that as a kid and kind of was always drawn to missionaries would come to our church, and, I'd want to give of my own resources, as a child. And then grew up, of course, and life's as it does, right? And sometimes we have resources ourselves and sometimes we don't. And I have lived through some seasons where there were no resources.
Right.
There was nothing to give, if you will. And I can remember a time when I began to tithe formally, and how hard it was at first. There was a period of time, and I don't remember how long it lasted, but there was a period of time where I did the mental calculation, right, and could tell you, if you asked me, the other things that I could have done with that money.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was noticeable.
Yeah.
It was, for some people, maybe 10% is, is a little off the top, right? But if it's, for some it's sacrificial, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that season, and I also remember how over time I quit doing those calculations in my head.
Yeah.
And something in me shifted. And instead of thinking about, what I was doing without because of giving, I began to look for other opportunities. I have just experienced this just really beautiful journey of generosity over, I would say, the last 30 years as an adult. And it's really interesting. There's great literature out there too. And I did my doctoral work in this area. So I got to do a lot of reading. And there's this wonderful book called The Paradox of Generosity. And it's actually a study of Americans who give.
Yes.
And, it says that people who give regularly over time, are healthier and happier, or their perceptions of being healthier and happier, are there. And when I read that, I thought to myself, I've I've experienced exactly what
Right.
they're talking about. Gone from being a person who, calculated the loss,
Mm-hmm.
to someone who wishes I had more to give.
Right. Yeah.
That's been a really beautiful journey for me, and I think leading other people into that, I think, is something that means a lot to me, to help people see that it's not a loss. We don't ever lose when we put something in the flow of, God's spirit in the world.
Yeah.
I would never say there's some exact calculus about,
Yeah.
it comes back in
Yeah.
some certain way,
Yeah.
because I don't believe there's
Yeah.
anything formulaic about that.
Yeah.
But I know that I've changed,
Yeah.
and I think my gifts make it possible for other people to
Yeah.
change as well.
Yeah. That's such a wonderful way. I love how you describe this all because, sometimes when we talk about stewardship, like we sort of start with like a theological premise or like we feel like there's a method, and I love how you start with story, just observing just the reality of and how you frame it, not as resources or funding, it's actually just his journey of generosity. I love that phrase because it's really this mindset of the heart, what I'm hearing from you.
It is.
And the disciplines, whether you call it tithing or whatever, they're just kind of disciplines to make sure that you stay on the journey, because if we don't have those guardrails, like we jump off it. That's kind of what I was hearing.
Right.
And it's a long sustained journey because it's amazing that I love how you're saying this took time.
Oh,
this is,
absolutely.
And I think sometimes we get confused or we're worried oh man, I gotta give money and you get so wrapped up in the small step or the actual act, and you don't think oh no, this is just a longer journey.
Right.
That if we just commit to it, it's going to change your life. It'll change the way you look at things.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does.
And when you were talking, I was thinking, wow, how countercultural is this right now in this generation of small-heartedness, Koreans have this word, I can't really translate it, but it's when the heart is very narrow and you just don't have a lot of capacity for people, and then just in the spirit of scarcity that's everywhere.
Right.
This discipline of generosity, this journey of generosity. I feel wow, how transformative it could be in our times if we could embark on it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I guess when you're a local church pastor, seeking for offerings or as development, that thread of look, we need your funds, of course, but we're inviting you into this journey of generosity.
That's right. That's right.
We are inviting you to get blessed as you do this. Exactly. Yeah.
Henry Nouwen, in his great work, The Spirituality of Fundraising, says something like that. We're not beggars for God.
That's
Fundraising is not begging.
Yeah.
Instead, we are inviting people, to join their resources with God's purposes.
Right.
Yeah. And it's an invitation.
Yeah. That's so wonderful because I'm sure you and I both have experienced working with local church pastors, they're dreading asking for special offering or this or that.
Right.
Because I've got to beg for this and that. But this really reframes the mindset.
Yes.
That it's an invitation to blessing, I guess. Right. That's really powerful. I can see it really comes through, your conviction and your desire for that. I was just thinking, when we're talking about development and all these things, I've worked with you in the ARC initiative at BSD, and you have these major grants, maybe more than $1 million, and you have, a storied institution, the portfolios and the people that you connect with. Berkeley School of Theology is obviously known in the Bay Area, but it's also nationally known. These are big portfolios. These are big weights. And I was just wondering, how do you balance the heaviness of these big responsibilities and then your own kind of personal life? Because I just wanted to ask this because I think sometimes some pastors really feel we're over our heads. What I have to do at church, I represent this church in many years. Our budget is like this. Who am I to be in here? There's just a lot of sometimes imposter syndrome, or there's a lot of anxiety.
Oh, absolutely, imposter syndrome every day.
And I just wonder, how do you navigate all that stuff? Because I think a lot of people would have very similar kind of struggles, within Evergreen Church, and how would you encourage them as they kind of wrestle with all of that?
I have a tendency to be kind of radically honest, which, not everybody's comfortable with,
Yeah.
but there are days where it just feels like too much.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And there are days when I ask, is it worth it? Right? I mean, surely I'm not the only one that asks that question sometimes. I told you I have a tendency to be radically honest. And there are other days that at the end of the day you go like, this is why I was here. This is why I'm here.
Right.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And those 3 different days can be, right in a row.
Yes. Yeah.
I do prioritize self-care probably in some in very routine sort of ways. I have a tendency to be a very routine person. And I protect my energy as much as I can.
Right.
So I'm an introverted person who has to serve in a very extroverted
Very public
way.
facing, yeah.
Right. And so I have to kind of protect my energy. So I make sure to get the kind of quiet alone time that I need every day. It's just essential for me to fill my tank before, I start depleting it.
Yeah.
That hasn't always been so easy. I mean, in seasons when you're raising children and things like that, those moments are hard to come by. But in this season of my life, I'm able to, to prioritize that. And making sure that I'm taking care of myself first. There was a time in my life when I thought I had to be the first one at the office.
Right.
Every day.
Yeah.
And I've reached a point where I've decided that, that's not necessary. That the office will not always be, mine for one, right?
Yeah.
It will, in all likelihood, outlast me as a leader. And, it's not what, it's what I do, but it's not the whole of me.
Yeah.
And so I go in a little bit later now.
Yeah.
So that I can do the things that I need to do.
Yeah.
Which includes, meditative walking and things like that, which I find really helpful for both clearing my head and as well as like surfacing ideas, right? There's something about kind of, getting out and moving that shakes ideas loose and things like that. And so I find that really, really meaningful.
Yeah.
And try to do that, every day.
That's really, what I'm hearing, which I really like, is that there's kind of 2 threads of like self-awareness. Like you need to know yourself, right? Like not everyone, maybe meditative walking is like their practice, but like, this serves you.
Yes.
And through time and experience, like what serves you, right? Like, and what is not helpful to you, right? Like the timing and just giving yourself that space to learn from yourself, I think is really big. Because I feel, speaking to a lot of leaders and church pastors, sometimes like they just don't have the space to stop and learn about themselves, like they keep trying to do things and like, are you honest with, like radically honest with yourself, right? That radical honesty to yourself is like, look, I know everyone thinks like you should be doing this as a leader, but it's not you. And it's actually not helpful to you.
Right.
It's even detrimental to you. And to have that like good, long, honest journey. So we were just talking to, Morgan Fletcher about the well-being cohort. And a big part of that was like understanding, hey, this is good for me. This is healthy for me. This is not healthy for me. And how that looks is different for everybody, right? Giving yourself the permission to do that. I think that's very wise, and I really appreciate you saying that. The other thing I really liked went back to the generosity thing of having that routine, like that discipline of routine of just the structure or like those guardrails, I wonder if there needs to be more of that said, because I feel definitely your job is so multifaceted, right? You're doing so many things, so many different skills at once. But I think of also the local church pastors, who might be watching this or listening, as you know, the local church pastor is always doing like a million things. Like,
it's so hard to be a generalist.
It's so hard. it's so draining, isn't it?
It really is.
And
it
so,
really is.
so to have those like grounding routines, the familiarity. I remember one of my professors saying, like, he was a preaching professor, and he said, for me as a pastor, I have to mow my lawn every week just to know like I did something and finished it. And he just has this very routine, because like I just want to do something that I start and I finish and it's
love
done.
that.
And not recommending everyone to mow their lawns,
Right.
but having that practice where
Yes.
it just feels like, okay, I've done it, it's good. It just keeps me grounded.
Yes.
And we all have a different one, but I love what you're saying, because that also applies to generosity of like, there's a very practical, tangible, not scary way to give and embark on the journey of giving.
That's right.
And if you just did it with the guardrails, like watch it change your life, right? That past night preaching professor would be like, hey, look, if you just regularly commit to like one manageable act every week,
Yes.
like, it can change your life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Meditative walking every week. Doesn't seem like a big thing, but wow, so transformative. Look at all these new ideas that came out of it, like you said.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. This has been such a great interview for me, because I feel, in some ways, I bet from afar, people are like, oh, wow, here's Reverend Dr. Angie, coming in, and she's got these big portfolios and she's doing this. But like, just how personable you've been in your approach to theology and the academy, I think it's very meaningful. And I think that's really helpful too for other leaders, where we feel like, hey, we have to hold a lot of stuff. But, if I just bring it back to myself and my stories, I know who I am, just being honest.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes life a lot easier.
It does.
Yeah, it does. Because growing up in like a Korean church, sometimes I felt, well, you're a pastor, you need to look like this, you need to talk like this. But, just coming back to being honest with your stories and sharing, I think is so awesome.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm so excited for what you're sharing. Now this is surprising to all the viewers here, but Angie was telling me that she was a little intimidated by the cameras, right?
Very much.
Yeah, but no one's noticed it. I'm still very skeptical about this, because we had such a great conversation. But I appreciate it. I'm so glad that you took time out of your busy schedule to be our keynote speaker. We're so blessed to have you, and very grateful for this talk.
Thank you.
So,
I'm grateful to visit with you. So
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and there's more to come. Please subscribe and like, and we just invite you to get to know Evergreen better. And a great way to get to know us is to get us to know through these conversations. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.